Welcome to Coast Vue, the show that every single day celebrates the men and women who are making coastal Mississippi, and Mississippi for that matter, a better place to live, work, and play. Hey, we have a very special show today, but let me kind of set it up a little bit. If you're a regular listener of Coast Vue, you know this, that I am a proud graduate of the University of Southern Mississippi, and I'm honored actually to be a member of the Hall of Fame for Southern Miss. When I was a leader here on the coast for so many years, I was always a major proponent of a four-year university in coastal Mississippi. In fact, you might find it interesting to learn that as a student of USM, I actually formed an organization called Students for a Four-Year University on the coast. And as a publisher of the Sun Herald, and even before I became publisher, I was always pushing for a bigger presence for Southern Miss here in coastal Mississippi. And I always believed very strongly there was a direct relationship between the quality of the education that's available in a community and ultimately the success of the community. When you think about coastal Mississippi being the economic engine that drives this state, I can't think of a more important conversation than to think about education and workforce development and all the things that come with that. Certainly a huge issue here in coastal Mississippi. As I go back in my, from the moment I entered Southern Miss to later finishing my MBA, I always had a tremendous admiration for Dr. Aubrey Lucas, the longtime tenured president of Southern Miss. He was a man who was soft-spoken but incredibly inspiring as a leader. I can't tell you a time as I advanced in my career working for the Sun Herald, ultimately becoming publisher of the Sun Herald. I can't tell you a time that I didn't have a conversation with Dr. Lucas where he didn't ask me if there's any way he could help me in my efforts in the community to improve this community. Now, especially after Hurricane Katrina. I ran into him, bumped into him a bunch after Hurricane Katrina, and he was always, even in retirement, I might add, he was always incredibly interested in doing anything he could to support our efforts here in coastal Mississippi. So, and since Dr. Lucas, I've had tremendous relationships with every single president of Southern Miss up through this current moment. Along the way, I got to know some amazing people, not just as presidents of the university, but leadership at the university, getting a better understanding of what Southern Miss has been doing. I think a lot of his great work, so much of his research work, his work in general, the work on the blue economy in coastal Mississippi and marine sciences, I mean, the list goes on, is a little bit off the radar screen to some extent. It's unfortunate, but it is. And we're going to talk more about that here in just a second. Along the way, though, one of the most dedicated representatives that I ever got to know was a man I only knew as Joe Paul. And thousands of others of us only knew him as Joe Paul. And the reason why is because he certainly went to Southern Miss in the 1970s, but he ultimately became a very, very significant leader involved in student organizations and anything having to do with students. Joe Paul was involved with it. And so he was there for over 40 years and retired. And he was as enthusiastic the day he left that job than the day he came into that job. I was really, really pleased recently to learn and to hear that when Rodney Bennett, the current, who was the immediate past president of Southern Miss, decided to leave the post, that the College Board had appointed Dr. Joe Paul, my friend Joe Paul, as interim president of Southern Miss while they did an extensive search. And I've been looking forward to having a conversation with Joe Paul here on about Southern Miss here on Coast Vue. And so without any further ado, let me welcome my friend, and delighted to have my friend, Dr. Joe Paul, to Coast Vue this morning. How you doing, Joe Paul?
I'm doing great. And Joe Paul is fine. My mother calls me that.
Well, it's hard for people to call you Dr. Paul, isn't it? I mean, let's be honest.
That's fine with me. Absolutely.
They got to know you. I tell you what, again, we've run into each other in so many different ways. My family went to Southern Miss. Only one son that didn't. My wife and I went. My brother-in-laws, sister-in-laws. I mean, my sisters. We're all Southern Miss family. I had one son that went to Auburn, but they.
Yeah, we're great with Justin and Tori, so we're okay with that.
Well, it's interesting. He wanted to pursue a career in architecture.
Yes.
And ultimately went on to get a double master's in business and finance, and he works for Price Waterhouse up in New York now. But it was, a lot of the career, his career decision that led him in that direction. And he was always going to be the outlier. He was the kid that was going to travel the world. He was going to come home and say, give us a hug, but he was going to. He was never going to live in coastal Mississippi. He loves New York City, and that's kind of where he's going to be. But I've seen you in so many different roles, as a community leader, as the president publisher of the Sun Herald, as the president publisher of the Press Register in Mobile, and when I was the president publisher of the Times-Picayune in New Orleans. Our paths constantly were crossing because you were engaged in the not only the strategic focus of the university, but you were working to present the sort of the face of the university and everything you did for 40 years, especially the later part of your career. How does it feel to be in that office at this moment?
Well, it feels great on the one hand. So I was contacted in June by a couple of trustees and the commissioner and said, if we so choose, would you be willing to come and serve? And, Ricky, I really can't separate my life from the University of Southern Mississippi. So it was a very easy yes. It's humbling, but it's also been really exciting. And about 80% of the time, really fun, Ricky.
I know. Hey, look, here's the thing. And I learned this as a CEO the last 16 years of my career, that by the time a challenge or a problem gets to you, it's been through a lot of layers, and there's never any easy problems or any easy challenges that get to you. And that's just the way it is, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Look, I shared something on the show the other day that said that you find someone, I don't remember the exact words, but you find someone who loves what they do, that they will have also discovered the fountain of youth. I thought that was a great way to say it. But you're kind of a timeless guy. You kind of found your fountain of youth in that university, didn't you?
I haven't thought of it or framed it that way, Ricky, but I would certainly suppose that's true. My energy for the university and its advancement, my affinity for it, and just call to it really do energize me every day. And the one thing I had to readjust to was the pace of more than full-time work. But so far, the Energizer Bunny is working somewhere, and I've been going really hard, and it's energized me. It hasn't tired me out. So I hope that's true.
Yeah, that's certainly from where I'm sitting. Of course, I'm very active because of this show. I'm very active on social media. And certainly I'm active too, just because I spent a career in media and I like to pay attention to what's going on. So if I'm involved in any of the blogs or social media sites that involve Southern Miss, or just in terms of the fact that I've had the opportunity to do over 600 shows since I started Coast Vue, and I talked to a lot of Southern Miss leadership and a lot of Southern Miss graduates, the overall feeling about you, Joe Paul, is extraordinary. I mean, and I wouldn't say that if I didn't really feel that. And I think it has to do with your years of service for sure. But you're such a positive force for the university. You believe that, and we'll get there in a second, but you believe that there are so many secrets about this university that other people need to know about, way beyond polymer science, et cetera. But you get that, and the feeling about you is so darn positive. I've never seen that since Aubrey Lucas.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. We've had a tremendous uptick in social media engagement and responsiveness. And, my goal in walking into this thing, it's really not about me, but rather reminding us as Southern Miss grads, students, faculty, and staff, who we are, what our culture is. When you go through a change, there can be lethargy, there can be fear, people can kind of shut down. And so what I've been doing is getting out as hard and fast as I can all over the Southeast and all over the state of Mississippi to remind people of that good news of Southern Miss. And I start, Ricky, with this, something you well know, is that we have a distinctive culture at Southern Miss, right? And I describe that culture as, the word I use is grit. And the way I define grit is that's passion toward audacious goals with an unequal or unrivaled persistence toward them. So the reality in our history is that few things come easy to Southern Miss, right? I mean, the people in this community started trying to have a teacher's college here in 1877, and were not successful until 1910. And that kind of goes forward. But it's really who we're about, right? That we don't stop at the first no, that we take on challenges that others around us think might be too big for us, and that we stay after it. You know, we fight and we claw and we work and we reach that mountain, and then we look for another one. And so that message has really resounded. It's just reminding people of who we are, right?
There's what comes with that is an extreme independence.
Yes.
There's also an underdog mentality that comes with that. Your point about fighting and clawing. When there's an underdog mentality, you're working a lot harder to be more competitive, and that's where this outbranch of innovation occurs that makes the university what it is today. But when we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with the president of Southern Miss, Dr. Joe Paul, and we have so many areas we want to cover. We'll see you after this break. Welcome back to Coast Vue. I'm having a terrific conversation with my old friend. I've known him for so many years as he has represented Southern Miss with such distinction. Dr. Joe Paul, the current president of Southern Miss, and someone I admire greatly. You know, you talked about that underdog mentality, and we were talking about having to fight and claw. Let me tell you a quick story. When I was working for Knight Ridder, I was a senior executive. It wasn't a publisher of the newspaper yet, but I had the opportunity to join the strategic planning effort for Knight Ridder. And we were doing what is called a re-engineering effort. We're literally looking at how we could centralize technology, and there were some very, very significant things we were involved in. And they put together a team out of 26,000 employees, 12 of us. I was one of the 12, and we met in Boston. And I was sitting at the table in Boston with these 12 people, senior executives of the company, the president of the company on one side of me, the CEO on the other. And in the room were Harvard graduates and Yale graduates and really, really smart people. And here's Ricky Matthews from Mississippi, a Southern Miss graduate. And I had to be honest with you, in my mind, I thought, why am I here? You know, how did I deserve this opportunity to sit here? And, there was, I didn't feel like I was worthy to be in that moment. But as time went on, Joe Paul, what was interesting is that I came to know that I was incredibly well prepared, for a matter of fact. I could hang with the rest of them. And in fact, went on to lead strategic planning efforts for the company later in my career, and having, regional responsibilities for other newspapers working out of Biloxi. But, I was very, not only was I proud to be a Southern Miss graduate, but I came to appreciate that the education I had really prepared me well to hang in some really significant circles. I bet you've heard that story many times, haven't you?
I've heard that story, and I've lived that story, Ricky Matthews. I absolutely have. You know, when I went into my doctoral program at the University of Alabama, there were folks that were Ivy League educated and from all over the country, and I was well prepared, and I was confident. But that's the Southern Miss story, right? That we can take people sometimes from very ordinary backgrounds, and with the Southern Miss education and buying into that culture, see them go on to do extraordinary things in the world. And you're certainly an example of that. And there are just countless others. I like that idea of the fierce independence and the determination. And the worst thing we could try to be is like anyone else, in this state or in this region. And our strength is in how we are distinctive and different. And there's a world of examples of that. I like to tell our students the only peer pressure at Southern Miss is to be your best self. And there's a school where people dress alike, think alike, doesn't matter who your mom and daddy are. This is a place about helping you develop into your best self and challenge you to look up, right? At a horizon and see it at a farther distance, and know that you can get there with this education.
Yeah, I mean, really, the key to success in life is literally to be focused on being the best version of yourself. If you've got an environment, not only within the academic environment, but even within the environment of Hattiesburg and the campus and the kind of people that you come in contact with and the opportunities that are there for you if you choose to take advantage of those opportunities, you have a chance to become the best version of yourselves. And if you go back and look at the history of Southern Miss and graduates that have left there, that have gone on to do unbelievably important things in the United States and even beyond the United States, it's incredible what the university has done. Hey, Joe Paul, let me get something out of the way real quick. So you're the interim president. And I'm just curious, when the College Board came to you and said, we want you to do this role, first of all, I think they were genius in having you do it. Did they tell you don't be interested in the permanent role? How does that work? How did they have that conversation with you?
Well, we did not have that direct conversation, but sort of the operating norm really around the country in higher ed is this: if you accept an interim, you're not placing yourself as a candidate for the permanent position. That would really that would taint the search, right?
Yeah.
And so, what I've told them, what I've told our alums, what I'll tell you is that we're making great progress, and I'm willing to serve in this position as long as they need me to, and to sort of build the runway so that when the 11th permanent leader is appointed and on campus, we hand them a university that's just revved and ready to go.
Yeah, let me just add one other quick thing. Again, I've had multiple company responsibilities, and if I'm looking for a president of a company that I have responsibility for, I'm going to do an exhaustive search. I mean, that's what you do. You do an exhaustive search. But sometimes that search brings you back to, the person that was best for that job was right here in front of us. And I'm not trying to pull out of you this, but I just want to say this real quick. 40 years at the university, you understand well the unique culture of Southern Miss, of Mississippi, the role that Southern Miss plays on the coast, especially. Certainly there's an athletic component to that, understanding the uniqueness of that. You're talking about fighting and clawing. We've learned how to fight and claw in our athletic programs. There's an academic side to that. There's a student side to that. There is a representing the university side to that. And man, there's a major league fundraising side to that. You're talking about, the capital campaign of $150 million. I can't imagine how difficult a new president is going to, have a way of sort of rowing those waters, having to develop all these new relationships when you've got a guy in that position already that has relationships with every single big donor in the state of Mississippi and beyond. It seems like you're the right guy for that job. I actually should start a major effort saying drop the interim, but I'm not trying to draw you in. I just feel like you're the best guy for that job, and I know that you're going to play it smartly, and you're going to help this university be ready for the new president, whoever that person may be. If for some outside chance it happens to be you, it would just be smooth sailing from that point forward. So I appreciate your professionalism and the way that you handled that part of the conversation. Anything you want to add before we switch gears?
No, just that I think what we can do, and I've told my top team this, is that do this work in such a way that you set a high expectation for that next leader to follow. And not only is it ready, and certainly me, whoever comes after me, I'm going to work with them as long as they'll have me to help them understand our culture and who we are if they need that. It might be someone that doesn't need that at all.
Yeah, well, that's good. I would expect nothing less than you. And that's exactly the approach that you should be taking. And I just hope the College Board is paying very, very close attention to the way people are responding to you and the way leaders and major contributors and others. Okay, so we'll switch gears for a second. One of the marketing campaigns for coastal Mississippi is Secret Coast. That generally people don't know that there is a beautiful coast here in coastal Mississippi, which it's been a great, well-kept secret for many years because of the casinos and the amount of money they're spending on marketing, hundreds of millions of dollars. Obviously people are becoming more aware of coastal Mississippi. But if you think about Southern Miss, it's also sort of these secrets. I mean, people, you heard me mention a minute ago, people think people who are close to the university or who have any awareness of the university, they certainly are aware that very, very significant innovation has been happening in the area of polymer science. They may not be fully appreciative of this whole emergence of the blue economy and the work that's happening down here on the coast and why that's going to be important. They may not understand what's happening in the area of arts and music. And I mean, I could just cover the spectrum. When you look at the university that is hitting on so many cylinders at one time, there's a lot to be proud of. There's a lot for the world to know about, isn't there?
There really is. And that's where I'm spending 90% of my energy. There's no reason for people, especially I-20 South and really throughout the Gulf South, to know what a gem we have here. One of the things I like to say is there's no reason for a student from the Mississippi Gulf Coast to drive through Hattiesburg to go to a university anywhere else. And so I'm out there preaching that gospel. And, I know you'll want to talk about this, but the things that we're putting together on the coast, it's sort of like, it was 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And now we're right at that tipping point of critical mass that not only is Southern Miss the gateway to the Gulf, but it's going to be the driver of the blue economy. And it's not going to be 20, 30 years from now, Ricky. It's today, it's tomorrow. It's big time economic development for the Gulf South, right at our doorstep.
It is. It's interesting. For so many years, marine science in general, just marine science, had been such a big part. The work that they've done down here at their research lab has been incredibly important for as far back as I can remember. And it's interesting. So that sort of created an awareness of what could be possible. But I think it took people a sort of a planning, a group of smart people to develop a plan to say, okay, wait a minute, that's just one piece of it. What is really possible when we start talking about the economic drivers around the ocean? It could certainly be science for sure. It could be unmanned, ocean drones. It could be, sophisticated, shipping, capabilities. I don't know. It could be anything that involves the ocean. And you guys have really grabbed hold of this notion that says the blue economy has a very all-encompassing possibility, and Southern Miss is going to be a player in that area. When we come back on the other side, we'll talk a little bit more about that part, and then we'll continue the conversation. See you after this with Dr. Joe Paul. Welcome back to Coast Vue. I'm delighted and honored to have my old friend and someone I admire greatly, Dr. Joe Paul, the current president of the University of Southern Mississippi. One of the things that I remember, and this goes all the way back to, at least in conversations with Dr. Lucas and then with every president since, that Southern Miss didn't just accept the budgets it was given and say, okay, we're just going to protect the status quo and we're going to just, we're going to find our place in Mississippi and we'll do the best we can with what we have to work with. You didn't, that's not what an underdog mentality is. What an underdog mentality is that we're going to accept these budgets. We're going to hire the best people we have. We're going to develop plans that enables Southern Miss to become a leading university in certain dimensions. And one of the things I remember so well is how much focus you guys put on strategic planning, on envisioning where those pockets of incredible excellence could emerge for the university. And I can remember having conversations and thinking about, okay, we're going to build this building or we're going to build this. What has emerged there, incidentally, and just in the campus alone, it's been incredible. I mean, the amount of construction that has taken place and the amount of thinking that's gone into sort of orderly putting all these bits and pieces of the strategic puzzle together, that's been something to watch. But the strategic focus is really important, isn't it?
It is. And also that business around not stopping at, we can't do that. And let me give you a real current example that I've been able to get launched just in the last 8 weeks. We're going to stand up a physician assistant program on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. And, people say, well, you're going to have to invest about $1.7 million over the first year to get accredited before you ever enter a class. We can't afford that. Why not? By the second year, the program breaks even. By the third year, it starts to pay back. And so we're on go. We've applied for accreditation. It's before the College Board. We're hiring people. And I've been able to raise $600,000 in private gifts to help that stand up. And if we've got to invest university money, I'll be seeking other partnerships with the healthcare community and private gifts. And we're not going to let that's a lot of money stop us from doing something that's needed.
Hey, just one quick comment about that, by the way. I had Dr. Paul Mullins. He's a cardiologist on the show just in the past week. He's my cardiologist, for a matter of fact. And one of the conversations that we had was the emergence of physician's assistants within the cardiology realm. This is certainly true for other specialties as well, has been incredibly important. And his physician's assistant that I've gotten to know really well is Kelsey Park Seymour, and she's terrific. I've known her for most of her life. But what the role that physician's assistants are playing today in medical care in general, and in a place like Mississippi, by the way, I should point out where we've got areas where, especially in the rural areas, we've got some real challenges, and you're seeing telemedicine becoming a big part of what's happening and whatever. There's some tremendous innovation happening in that realm, and obviously you guys saw that. That's terrific news that you're going into that direction.
Yeah, it's important. And, nurse practitioners, which we also already create, and PAs are the fastest growing professional segment of the healthcare industry in general. And I don't want to get too sidetracked, but in terms of critical healthcare needs in Mississippi, we've got some really innovative partnerships we're launching with Alcorn State. That sort of southwest quadrant of the state is among the poorest for us, south of I-20. And so we're going to be aggressive in that as well. It's what universities are here to do.
Yeah, you know what? And I have a place up in the Delta. I spend a lot of time there, and Greenwood Hospital is in very serious trouble. Could close at the end of the year. In fact, Gary Marchand, who used to be the president of Memorial Hospital, is there in an interim role. But I mean, you see the areas of the Delta and how they're being challenged today. We can't have enough professionals in Mississippi being developed today. Particularly, I mean, you can't make enough doctors to fill these voids, but PAs are a way to maybe do that. And again, we could go deep into this, but it's terrific to hear that Southern Miss is on the cutting edge of that.
Yeah, we're excited about that new program.
So the blue economy emerges from these strategic discussions, though. This says, we're not just going to look at marine science. We're going to bite out the whole apple.
Absolutely. And, you look at sort of what's emerged on the coast from Stennis Space Center, where we've got marine science, hydrography, geospatial. We move over to Gulf Park, our primary teaching location, and then everything that's happened in and around the port of Gulfport with the Roger Wicker Center, which I think is going to be the synergistic kind of catalyst, Ricky, that pushes all this together. And I'm very excited about the Gulf and Ship Island operation, which is going to be really an incubator for emerging new industries. We've got more people wanting to come in there and work with our science than we have resources to fill. We'll just keep rolling. And then you just roll on right into the fisheries area and everything that's going on at the Gulf Coast Research Laboratory. Now, what I say is new, and I got to share credit here from Gordon Cannon, who was our VP for Research, now our provost, to Kelly Lucas, who's a Coast native, who's an ocean scientist, who's our VP for Research, and Dr. Shannon Campbell, who's our lead person for coastal operations, has a background in economic development. Is what they're now doing is pulling it all together toward a common vision of this blue economy, right? Gulf Blue, big ideas out of the blue, marketed, branded, but it's for real.
Yes.
and we're going to be involved with the port in terms of smart port technology. We're developing academic programs in logistics, trade, and transportation. I'll just tell you what I believe, Ricky, and I'm a coast guy too, right? I grew up in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi. I'm not as multi-generation as you and your in-laws, but there's something about growing up on the water, especially if you are multi-generation. It's a powerful draw. People don't want to leave it. I've had freshmen come to Southern Miss in Hattiesburg in the fall, have a great semester, and come to me and say, Dr. Paul, I got to go back home because it's on the Gulf Coast. So our focus on the Gulf Coast in terms of the teaching component should be coastal programs for coastal jobs for coastal people. And that's where we're bringing the focus. Now, the reality of it is a lot of it will extend way beyond the coast. You know, if we can scale up that hydrographic science program, there's little limit. I mean, every person that goes through that has multiple job opportunities. But I think that's the theme that's going to resonate. And that's what I'm pushing as long as I'm in this seat.
Hey, when I have Mayor Billy Hughes on, or any leader who is focused on how to strengthen the region, one of the most important things we talk about is that building the kind of communities where people want to live. And I think about, look, downtown Gulfport, for example, Stuart Speed, Roy Anderson, Rick Carter are developing this huge multi-million-dollar mixed-use facility at the corner of 49 and Highway 90. That's, you know, it's just going to fit perfectly with all these things you just mentioned as it relates to the blue economy, because it's going to give people a chance to live, work, and play in a very similar area. And you see this emerging all across coastal Mississippi. In downtown Biloxi, major things happening in Pascagoula as we speak. Ocean Springs was already on the cutting edge of this. Bay St. Louis, as you well know, was already on the cutting edge of this. But what they've done to reemerge after Hurricane Katrina is a whole nother story in and of itself. But Southern Miss is part of who we are. And look, the coast is an economic engine for this state. Very few people want to debate that. So the reality is, our university, I'm sure that there's a role for Ole Miss and Mississippi State and William Carey and all of us. You can't have enough education.
Right.
We could spend a whole nother show on the Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College and the relationship you have with them, and that over 50% of their students are now involved in job development as opposed to traditional academic. But Southern Miss has a very unique play in this regard, and it's particularly important as it relates to the blue economy that you guys put your flag down there and develop the coast objectives around that. To me, it's a winning strategy. How can you fail in that endeavor?
I can tell you that we will not. And you know, everybody in this state, not just South Mississippi, everybody in this state will be better for it in ways that we haven't seen before. That's just how powerful it's going to be. And you know, you talked about those community colleges and partnerships, and that's going to be critical. There are going to be more jobs created through this blue economy than we have people. All right. Yes. And what? We're going to grow in the 6 coastal counties and beyond in terms of people coming in. And you know, one of the things I've done over this 8 weeks is had really meaningful meetings with community college presidents, 5 different ones, but among those, most prominently Mary Graham at Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College and Anna Brewerwood at Pearl River. And we're talking about everything from concurrent enrollment to, you know, this workforce development and how it's going to emerge around the blue economy, and how we can partner in terms of sharing resources for them to train people vocationally, and then being there on the backside to help those people earn more innovative bachelor's degrees while they work full time. So
we had a live remote actually recently at Gulfport High School, and the innovation that's happening there is truly remarkable. But when you think about how they're in touch with jobs and job development, job and workforce development, and then you think about Ingalls and Stennis and Southern Miss and Mississippi Gulf Coast Community, man, oh man. I mean, there's just, you know, you just have to have the vision to keep putting these partnerships together. And when these diverse partnerships come together, amazing things can happen, and we can serve we have many needs here in coastal Mississippi these days around workforce. Hey, listen, when we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Dr. Joe Paul from Southern Miss. Welcome back to Coast Vue. I have my friend Dr. Joe Paul, the president of Southern Miss, with us today, and we've covered the waterfront today. But one area that I really want to focus on for a second, Dr. Paul, is I pay a lot of attention to student enrollment, and I've really studied what happened during the pandemic, what's happened since the pandemic. But in some ways, the pandemic created some opportunities for Southern Miss, didn't it?
It did, in terms of especially becoming more comfortable with distance learning and creating some really innovative programs in construction management, library science. And I think the future is online programs for community college graduates, maybe even technical graduates who can come back online because they're going to be out there with really good jobs and sort of earning that bachelor's degree to give them enhanced opportunities for upward mobility within their chosen professions.
So you put a lot of focus on encouraging young people to come to your university, don't you?
We do. Student enrollment is probably my highest priority. That's something that we can, what we do this fall will have everything to do with how we look next fall. There's a decline in high school graduates, but I don't believe that you add to a goal a reason why you don't reach it. That's just a challenge, a part of the barrier. And so what I've been very active in fact, I will personally be in high schools in the Pine Belt and on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. I think sort of you protect your home turf first, right? So I'll be at St. Patrick's, I'll be at West Harrison already, but Gulfport, Biloxi, I'm looking for others. But I think the message is just to remind those prospective students of what that unique Southern Miss culture is. Because I believe, Ricky, that part of the way that has become is that was born by our forefathers and for, in terms of the salt and brackish water and the piney woods and the things that generations past had to do to exhibit grit, audacious goals with passion about them, persistence. And so therefore, I think that somebody that's a Gulf Coast high school senior will embrace that message. We just kind of got away from that message, and I'm bringing it back full bore. So we're going to be really active this fall in recruiting kids out of high schools and community colleges to Southern Miss.
That is awesome. Hey, listen, man, I cannot be more proud than having watched and honored to see the baseball team represent Southern Miss so well. The super regional, and then Ole Miss goes on and win the whole darn thing. You got to be proud of them for being able to do that. But man, what a wonderful day for the athletics program. I think the current football coach is the right guy for the job. I love the fact that he's focusing on the future, building sort of the foundation for the future. We've had too many come through here, as you've said so many times. They're more interested in getting a quick win under their belt so they could go on to do other things. I don't get that impression with this current coach, though.
No, you're absolutely right. And the baseball spring was glorious. But Will Hall is a perfect fit with Southern Miss and the state of Mississippi. He knows every coach in the state. He probably knows their mom and daddies. He knows that if a Sullivan is married to a Keys in Taylorsville, that their kids are going to be good athletes. And he's building the program the right way. So we're in year two. We're going to be really good this year. We found some things at Miami. We're going to be really exciting to watch. But by year three, we're going to be great. And the Sun Belt Conference, Ricky, is Jeremy McClain is a fantastic athletic director. He doesn't let our limitations stop our ambitions, right? And so the Sun Belt Conference move is so incredibly positive for us. And look what they did. They did last, weekend or a couple of weeks ago when this airs in terms of major, App State goes and beats Texas A&M. And Marshall beats Notre Dame, and Georgia Southern beat somebody they shouldn't have. So all this is setting up really well. And, the reality of it is, and Will Hall gets this, and Jeremy McClain gets this, we just got to win. I told Will, we went speaking out together all summer. I said, Will, if you can just win 6 games this year, take us to the bowl game, I'll go down as the greatest interim president in Southern Miss history. Can you do that for me? He didn't answer it, but I tell you what, it won't be for want of trying. He's building it the right way.
Well, you can tell that even when he talks. I used to say this. There are a lot of CEOs that can go into a company and make it do well in the short term.
Yeah.
But they were making decisions that weren't good for the long term of that company. So they could look good short term, but they knew when they made those decisions, they weren't going to be here to live with the decision. And I used to say that I'm going to be here to live with my decisions. I'm making decisions that I intend to fully have to live with 5 years from now. So I'm going to make decisions based on that. It changes the way you make decisions when you're building a foundation for the future, as opposed to trying to just get a quick win, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. He gets that. I think our people get that. And I'm just looking forward to great things there. And, whether one agrees that it should be or not, it's really important that we
Yeah.
have a successful athletic program. And
I know it is, and certainly what we saw around the fervor in the baseball season this year is a great reminder of that. But listen, we're out of time. Dr. Joe Paul, I'm going to lead an effort, hashtag drop the interim. I think you're an incredible representative for the university. I'm proud of you for the role that you're playing today. And, don't leave a stone unturned, my friend.
All right. We're going to go hard till we go home.
Okay. To the top. Absolutely. Okay. Well, listen, it's been a great day. Have a great day yourselves, and we'll see you tomorrow.